It's Bears week, so that means we get the pleasure of having ESPN's Courtney Cronin on our channels. Courtney obviously used to cover the Vikings, but now you cannot miss her on ESPN. She'll be covering the Vikings-Bears game at US Bank Stadium for ESPN NFL Countdown on Sunday. Courtney, wonderful to see you. You're excited to come back to Minnesota.
Anytime I get to go back to Minnesota, which was home for so long, and to play a game indoors where I don't have to stand outside early in the morning and freeze, I will sign up for that 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm sure you missed a little bit about this place. But speaking of the Bears, who have been have really turned their season around. They only have one loss in the last 7 games. What's really led to their success in recent weeks?
Well, I think Vikings fans can resonate with this because they remember all those one-score games their team was in back in 2022. And this sort of has a little feel like that here in Chicago, given the way that the Bengals game went. And then this last weekend against the New York Giants. And of course, Washington in week 6 and the Raiders before that. There's been a little bit of this like heart palpitation sort of thing that the Bears have given their fans over the last couple of weeks, given that they're now a 6-3 team and they've gotten by by the skin of their teeth on a couple of these games. And certainly the key to that has been Caleb Williams putting this team in position with 4 fourth quarter game winning drives this season, tied for the most in the NFL currently. But beyond that, like big picture wise, this team is winning games that it would have lost a year ago. And players have admitted that. Ben Johnson has said just as much too, that you learn how to win. Like you learn how to shrink the margins when you can close the gap on teams that you might have let it hang around far too long in a game, that you didn't put away when you had an opportunity to, when you let penalties come into play, when you let teams back in games the way they did 2 weeks ago in Cincinnati. But being on the winning end of those, you're not going to apologize for wins. Certainly they wish that they could, and hopefully for their sake to be able to carry this thing forward, to be able to win games far sooner than the final 2 minutes. But they've shown that they can pull it off. And so far it's worked and has them sitting tied for first place in the division.
Yeah, I mean, how much of that is the Ben Johnson effect?
I think that's a big part of it. And there seems to be a different level of coaching acumen and decision making when it comes to late game situations. And the play that I like to point out comes from Cincinnati 2 weeks ago. It's not just that the defense gives up 2 touchdowns in a 49-second stretch and then Caleb Williams goes and hits Colston Loveland for that 58-yard touchdown. To me, it's the plays beyond that in the final sequence for the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Flacco, who has a bum shoulder, is getting ready to launch a Hail Mary pass. And unlike the Hail Mary of last year that torpedoed the Bears season, they rush the passer this time. They send for, they pressure, they're aggressive, they're on the attack. That to me is emblematic of what this coaching staff is bringing to these games and bringing to their players, that their players are then taking into games. It's a competency thing that I think boils down to the very like nitty gritty level from play to play, where they've got coaches that trust their players, but players who also know that their coaches are going to put them in a better situation than we would have seen last year at this time. And that has carried over to the belief that they have in each other, the belief that this locker room has, that you've got a quarterback who has a switch he can flip in the 2-minute mode, whether it's at the end of the first half, end of the second half. He has the second highest QBR in the NFL right now, 2 minutes or less, either half. So clearly they've got the right people in place right now to be able to be sitting at 6-3. But I also know that they talk about the fact that nothing is clean enough just yet. You got to put together, like they have not played a full complementary football game this year. And that still remains to be seen how and when they will do that.
Yeah, it does feel like some of the Vikings games, when you speak about this team, some of the Vikings teams from 2022, and even some of those games last year, very, very familiar. And someone who's very familiar with this Bears offense is Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores, who said today that Caleb Williams thrives in these late game situations now. How have you seen that play out?
He's right. He does thrive. And I know that Caleb made this remark a couple of weeks ago that his heart rate actually drops in those moments. So I just figured, I was like, let me ask him about this. Like, do you measure your heart rate? He's like, well, no, it's not like he's wearing an Apple Watch, but it's more of a feeling where I actually do think like in more pressure packed moments, he performs better. And maybe it's because of a processing. He doesn't have to process as much. Maybe it's just see ball, get ball sort of thing for the receivers in that moment. And it feels like the game, like, I don't want to use the cliche term slows down for him, but it feels simpler because it's a do or die situation. And really the last 2 weeks, we've seen him get this team in position with his legs to go win games. Like that 58-yard touchdown pass to Colston Loveland does not happen in Cincinnati unless he converts that critical third down with his legs. Last week, the 29-yard scramble, which was the longest of his career, sets up the 2-yard touchdown pass to get the Bears back in it in the fourth quarter. And then the go-ahead score is him running in a 17-yard touchdown. So we know that he can make plays out of structure and he can make throws on the run. That's his bread and butter. That's what won him a Heisman Trophy at USC. But I think him tapping into his legs as a weapon. Like I talked to DJ Moore, Bears wide receiver, about this on Sunday, and he said, I feel like he's got the green light more because he's seeing defenses playing two-man quarters, man-to-man. It's giving him more running lanes to be able to attack a team that he might not have shown on tape at previous points of his career.
He's 20 plus games into his career as a starter by now. And a lot of talk is made about, you know, rookie quarterbacks coming in, they need that time to develop. You've watched this process play out for Caleb. How do you think the process is going to play out, or what are you seeing from the process with JJ McCarthy now 4 games in, and really just finding that consistency?
I think for JJ, it's different just because it's been stop-start with injuries. And he has a great game here in Chicago in week 1. And then the setback happens against Atlanta week 2. And then he's out. He misses a significant amount of time. And then to get back on the field, for Caleb, he's had a clean bill of health, which I know is not a guarantee by any stretch in the NFL. And that has helped him stay consistent out there because he's not missing time. We know that Kevin O'Connell has done a really solid job throughout his career of developing different types of quarterbacks, older established veteran quarterbacks, younger quarterbacks who, have shown that they have the capability, but haven't put all of that potential together yet. So I still think that what he's doing with JJ McCarthy, you get an incomplete grade on it right now because there's just not a big enough sample size to see the development in action. I think that JJ had some good moments against the Detroit Lions in that win, but then what happened against the Baltimore Ravens and the 2 interceptions that he threw early and some of the off-target passes, those are things that you work through as a young quarterback. And when you have a play caller who was dedicated to your development, when you're the guy that he chose, there's going to be that different level of emphasis on, I'm going to help make sure that you get it right. I mean, we saw it here with Caleb Williams. Ben Johnson looked at Caleb at the day he was hired in the audience and said, I came here because of you, but it's going to take more than just you to make this thing work, which I think is the case for any young quarterback. But it's unique to see around the league right now, the play callers and these second-year QBs, the 6 of whom were drafted in the first round. Bo Nix has already had proof of concept because he got this team to the playoffs last year. He's had a quieter couple of games. Their offense is kind of in a rut, but I saw it up close when I was on the call for Eagles Broncos back in week 6. Like, there is a belief from play caller to quarterback to go win the game in critical moments. We're starting to see it here with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. We are seeing it in New England with Josh McDaniels and Drake May. I think with time, you'll see that more with Kevin O'Connell and JJ McCarthy, but you have to have that level of consistency of consistent games in which the quarterback's able to be out there and playing in order to know if it's working.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's a small sample size, he has played the Bears before, which is kind of ironic for him moving forward. And that was a very different game. And obviously week 1, you almost have to wipe the slate clean now that we're heading into week 11. And so as you go into this game, Courtney, what is one of the major storylines you are now following heading in?
It's so interesting anytime the Bears play Brian Flores and particularly Caleb Williams, because I remember his first game last year was at week 12 at Soldier Field when they played week 12 or week 13 when they played the Vikings. He was anticipating, Flores sending every blitz he's ever drawn up in his entire coaching career at him. And he called him king of cover 0. And he is. But then it's like there's this perception out there that was obviously carried into this season, week 1. And 26 of his dropbacks Caleb Williams faced like standard 4-man pressure. So I think that that's so fascinating, the chess match here, where somebody and his MO of being an aggressive, dial it up, send the kitchen sink at you sort of defensive play caller versus these might be simulated pressures. It might look like a blitz. It's not. That's the cat and mouse game that I think it really does test an offensive coordinator and a play caller. And so for Ben Johnson, he said it reminds him of, early on in his career when he was with the Dolphins and they played the New England Patriots as often as they did, twice a year because they were in division, because flow comes from that system. When a team can change its identity week to week and what they're going to do, that makes it so challenging. And certainly Flores' defenses have done that throughout his time in Minnesota, throughout his time in Miami as well. Like he can make it really tricky. So I'm very curious to see how differently, now that this is their second time playing the Bears this year, how differently that game plan will look from week one, because you obviously have to account for Harrison Smith wasn't playing week one. Jonathan Grenard, his status, his availability with the shoulder injury, we don't know if you might have your best edge rusher. So I think there's a lot of cool things that come into play about what the defensive game plan could look like for the Vikings against this Bears offense, which is a cool part of the chess match that we really won't get to see until it starts to unfold on Sunday.
It's a very fair evaluation. I think when I was speaking to Blake Cashman after the Lions game, he was talking about how they were focused on reverse psychology. Like, we know that Jared Goff plays us and knows what to expect with this, and so we're going to do the exact opposite, but make you still think we're doing it. And so it's all about that chess match, which, of course, we can't wait to see. But before I let you get going, I just want to ask you, since you also just look at the league from a bird's eye view as well, the NFC North is, again, one of the stronger divisions. There are several teams going up and down the leaderboard in that division. How do you evaluate where this NFC North is, halfway through the year now?
Yeah, I mean, that game on Monday night in Green Bay was, it's not going to be one that's a burn the tape game of how ugly that one looked, but it's November in a cold weather part of the country. Those games are going to happen. And to see Green Bay lose, I remember going into last week thinking there could be some significant jockeying of positioning based on some of the games. Obviously, Vikings, Ravens, and where the Bears were playing the Giants and getting the win, and what Detroit did against a Washington team that doesn't have its starting quarterback. Like, to see the shift take place, to see Detroit and the Bears with identical records. Obviously, Detroit currently has the tiebreaker because if it ended today, they have the one win over Chicago. And then to see where the Vikings and the Packers are, I tell people, like, just, don't expect it to stay this way. Yeah. I think it remains like a very competitive division. I think that the NFC West is certainly taking the cake on that this year. They're my pick for the division that gets 3 in, like the NFC North did last year. Yeah. But I still think in order to get into the postseason for any of these teams, a division winner and for the wild card spot, I think it does take double-digit wins in this division. And a team like the Bears, they've got the Vikings coming up. They got Green Bay twice. They've got the Lions the end of the season. To start in an 0-2 hole, whereas the Vikings are on the opposite side of that with a couple early division wins. This is about as critical of a game as it could possibly be in a Week 11 scenario for a team that has to show we can beat the teams that you might call a different category, the bad teams in the NFL. Go beat a good team and do it in their place and gain some ground in what's a competitive division just about every year.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Courtney. And we appreciate you making your media rounds here with Minnesota today. Looking forward to seeing you on Sunday.
Thanks for having me.